Call the meeting to order. It's 6:30 on Monday, July the 8th, and this is the July monthly meeting for the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance. And I'd just like to welcome Kevin Spencer here this evening. Kevin is here in relation to one of the items on the agenda in case there are any questions, so welcome, Kevin. And the second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented unless there's some things to add. So I have I have Councillor Cameron and Councillor Hunter. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Third item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening?
None by me.
So no disclosures. I'm moving to item 4 on the agenda, which is business arising from the previous Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance meeting. Does anyone have any business arising from those minutes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. Item number 4, business arising from the previous meeting. There was a discussion about the town of Prescott, and there's been no, the second last sentence says there's been no formal request for support from Edwardsburg Cardinal. Has anything changed on that?
No, sir.
Thank you. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, any other business arising? Anyone? Hearing none, I'll vote to move on. Next item on the agenda is delegations and presentations. We have none this evening. So we'll move directly then to item number 6 on the agenda, which is just a discussion item. St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission. And the issue is opt-in or opt-out. And thought there should be some discussion following the presentation that we had last week from the chair, Mr. Beatty, and Michael Adamcrick, who was here with him. And I think there was a third person as well, although I can't remember who it was. Oh, Charles Vigneault, the commissioner.
Yes.
And so I know that Councillor Hunter had expressed to me that things seemed rather vague, but I thought we should have this talk, especially in view of the fact that Leeds and the Thousand Islands had sort of registered their intent to leave in a year as per the contractual arrangement that we have with the commission. Now, since had a couple of long talks with the mayor of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, Smith Gatke, and she indicates to me that one of the reasons they did it was just because they got so many issues in play right now that they just wanted to give themselves a little bit of leeway. They've changed their whole approach to economic development, and they're looking for a new approach, and she wasn't too sure whether their council would vote to stay or not, and so what they chose to do was sort of give their year's notice and make the decision sometime around December. So that's kind of where they sit. The reason I'm bringing that up is because I don't want members of this table to think that they gave notice and they're out and it's definite, because that's not the way it is. And there's a very logical reason for why they gave their notice. We have not done that, and because we haven't had the discussion, and I want to just have some discussion. And maybe to just temper what they said here at the meeting last month, I'll put it this way. The annual general meeting for the commission was held the last week of June, was actually held last Wednesday, the 26th. And on the 26th, first of all, the annual general meeting went very well. The finances are in good shape. Ray Morrison is now looking after the finances, and he's looking after the financial statement. But the commissioner made another report sort of behind closed doors, and the report was a lot more detailed than what you folks heard the other night. So if there's any way that I can raise your comfort levels, I think we should have that talk. So open the floor up for discussion.
Well, I might as well start. I think it's a duplicate of the service. I think we're being challenged to say, get a 4% saving in our budget here. I think we got United Counties that we has a very good business plan. I think they operate under for Legion Greville, and we're working the thing through economic development and stuff. I think she's been fairly successful. The counties have been attracting, they've been very successful, I think, in working with Edgeworth Cardinal in particular in businesses that we've attracted here over the years. And personally, I think if we were going to align ourselves with anyone, I think we're aligned with the wrong one, along the St. Lawrence corridor, because I think our growth potential is along 416. I think if we were aligned with anybody that we were going to pay extra money to, we should be looking at being in alignment with North Grenville to bring the economics this way, because I think North Grenville hasn't got a lot of business, but they're a very fast developing residential area. We got the businesses out here. We got the industrial land and park and the elevator and stuff. I think it'd make more sense for us to be aligned along the 416 corridor than the other way, because I think that's where, if we're attracting businesses, that's where it's coming from, mainly transportation and logistics. I think it's where we're aiming at. That's where we're going with Giant Tiger, and I think that's industry-wise. Let's face it, Ontario is not really competitive for bringing in manufacturing industry. We're competing worldwide, and I don't think we're, in this area, we can compete on that. Logistics-wise, with our transportation and communication and stuff here, I think we're ideally suited that we can compete under that. And I think that's Ottawa South is where that business is coming from, and along 401, not along the Seaway. So I think we're better to withdraw from it. And 23,000, that's a 28,000, that's a 0.5% of our 4% savings right there. So that's my opinion. I'm just one.
Okay, looking for other opinions.
I share Councillor Hunter's concerns as well. I was not impressed with the presentation that was brought to us almost as a last resort, last-ditch effort to get some word out. I just didn't feel it was a good presentation, and no, I possibly could be swayed into giving notice at the end of the year that we would be withdrawing, but why delay it? I would vote to opt out myself.
I can see that they did not make a lot of friends at the meeting, and I knew that, and I wanted to know that when we met at the annual general meeting, I made it very clear to them that the manner in which they made their presentation did not raise comfort levels at this table. But anyway, I'd like to hear from the other two.
First of all, Mr. Mayor, I don't know enough about him. I was trying to follow him. Deputy Mayor said he was trying to follow him on social media, I guess. He didn't have an awful time to make any sense out of it. And obviously last week, the meeting, it was hard to digest. But I disagree about North, 416 with Mr. Hunter on that, because it's, the St. Lawrence is our bread and butter. We have that elevator and so on, and Giant Tiger, and they have no industry north, and they'll never have any industry. And to get mixed up with them in something like that, myself, I would like to know, if they could maybe roll their socks up and get their head in the game and give us something to support them with. I'm sorry, I mean, and last week was not, a gentleman who was supposed to be bringing in new business, 81 this and 80, he had me, you know,
Well,
it was very, very, wasn't well done, let's put it that way.
their socks are not as down as far as you think. And this report that they prepared for the annual general meeting certainly indicates that. And there's, you know, one of the things that I criticized them for, I want to hear from Deputy Mayor Taylor, or Deputy Mayor Deschamps, but one of the things that I criticized them about was, you know, this is a strong story, and my councillors take an oath of office under the Municipal Act, and then we know what it means to take an oath and to maintain the secrecy of an in-camera meeting. So if you were really interested in swaying my council, you really should have, and I probably should have said, the meeting has to be in camera, where you can talk about what you're doing, and it wasn't. And so consequently, they didn't tell you the full story, but go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor.
so I've got, you know, several points, both for and against, because quite honestly, I would prefer to defer the discussion until after your August mayor's meeting, I think, at the end of the day. With all of the mayors that are still involved. Knowing that the mayors that are there for the meetings have different information, you know, I can see marked on the top of the one that you showed us, it says confidential. You and all of the mayors know far more information about, you know, what's coming down that pipeline and the ability, or their ability to do things than we do. And I think if we knew the same things that you knew, I think we might feel differently in how we approach. Having said that, my own opinions, you know, collaboration versus competitive. I see us working together with, you know, Prescott and Augusta and all of our neighbors, whether it's North Augusta or whoever. The fact is that regionalization is the future, and jobs are good no matter where they are. If people, we're seeing it right now with lots of people using our township that are moving in, choosing to live here and to work here, but also working outside of our township as well and calling it home. You know, good property values and low taxes. So even if somebody builds in Augusta Township, that's good for us. They can use the things that we have to offer. They can buy houses here, and it gives the region a chance to grow. So that approach for me is really good. $4 for every person doesn't seem like a lot, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it could be 28% or roughly 28% of our economic development dollars, a little less than that. You know, I mean, I know we don't have a whole lot, and I definitely agree with what John says as far as, you know, trying to make up that 4%, we have to find it somewhere. So I agree that makes it tough. I had, you know, a brief conversation with Karina about where they stand, and I think you've said that they're not necessarily out until afterwards. So I think that meeting, from all I can gather in August, when it's all mayors together, you know, if the problems can be sorted out, then I think that, you know, regionalization's a good thing, and I think we can actually stand to benefit quite greatly from it. But if those things aren't, you know, ironed out and to your satisfaction and to other satisfactions, they're going to be opting out as well. So it's going to fold, you know, it'll fold up one way or the other. So I think really, you know, waiting until your lead after that August meeting is probably the right way to go.
And so just so that other members around the table know what Deputy Mayor is referring to, it was decided at the annual general meeting on June the 26th that for the first time since we've started putting this thing together, the members of the board of directors, which is to say the mayors, and the appointees, the industrial appointees, will meet as a group on August the 7th on a confidential in-camera meeting without any staff present, without the commissioner present, without Michael Adamkirk present, without James Wilson present. Just the mayors and the industrial appointees, and there are a few things that have to be straightened out. And I think the chairman knows that I'm not happy with the way we've been conducting ourselves as a corporate entity. I mean, one of the things that I find really upsetting is that here we have a corporation that has no office and no records of any kind. No records. Everything is electronic and it's in the clouds. And so if you want to know where the minutes are, well, Deputy Mayor, you're the social guy, you know how to get on the website. Can you find the minutes of their meetings?
I haven't actually looked for the minutes of the meetings, but I can do a search tonight at some point and see if I can find them.
Just see what you can find. I'd be curious, because they call themselves a virtual corporate entity. Everything is electronic. I mean, I think you can be a virtual entity, but in the end result, you better have at least minutes of your meetings, and you better have paper financial statements and paper reports filed someplace. So those, and I know that there are at least 2 other mayors that have similar concerns to mine, so we'll see where the meeting on August the 7th goes, and if everybody's agreeable to postponing any further discussion on this until after August the 7th, I'm more than prepared to do that. The other thing I'm prepared to do is tell them, you better get back and speak to my counsel behind closed doors, because believe me, one of the major pushes has been to try to do something with the former DuPont site at Maitland. There are so many assets there that one of the things that we're all afraid of is that the existing businesses that are on that site are not going to be able to continue to support the water plant, the sewage plant, the electrical plant, the other plants that are there. And if those businesses can't continue to support that infrastructure, we'll lose everything. So the big push has been to find another major industry that will come to that site and buy services. And they've found 3. They've found 3 potentials. And they're working on those 3 potentials, and Charlie Mignot, the commissioner, is heavily involved to get those 3, 1 or 2 of the 3 of them, to get them on that site and into production. So that's what's hanging in the balance, if I can put it that way.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If I recall, when we first got into this process in the previous council, the first meeting that was held, the gentleman came and made the presentation. And afterwards, there was some discussion and there was wariness on our part of whether we should commit or not commit. And in the end, we decided to commit. And part of the reasoning was that, number one, we want to stimulate economic development in our area, region. Number two, we recognized at the time, even though we live in a time when instant gratification is kind of vogue, these kinds of projects have very long gestation periods. They require a lot of, I'm going to use the word politicking, and they're built basically on relationships. So those guys that started that corporation and are out trying to drum up the business have to spend time to formulate those relationships and to work them and to convince and present to boards of directors and organizations, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where you get into the time span. Now, if we really are committed to trying to stimulate economic development And we've bought into this program for, I think, one cycle. To consider, because we haven't seen results, like concrete results, to consider withdrawing is, in my view, premature. I think if we recognize those kinds of parameters that are at work, we could at least, consider going another cycle and asking these fellas who are involved on a daily basis to kind of estimate, not commit, but to give us a feel for the time span and the time frame. I mean, we don't want to go down the road and end up having, $200,000 spent and nothing to show for it. But on the other hand, if we spend 60 or 80 or 50,000, and we start to get something in the way of concrete activity, we could recover that over a period of time in tax revenue, fees, etc. So I think it requires a hand-in-glove approach between the council, our council, and other councils, and that team of executives that are working on this thing before we pull the rug out from under. I know from my experience, years and years, it took us almost 10 years to get the Middle Eastern contract that represented over $5.5 billion to Bell Canada.
Yeah.
So it takes time. We have to be patient.
And that's the frustrating thing about it, is the gestation period. And when they presented their report at the annual general meeting, again, as the deputy mayor said, it was confidential, and I think it should be shared with the other elected officials. Their degree of confidence was a lot more tangible than what was demonstrated here. And again, they're the ones that are building the relationships. And as you know, we have 2 members appointed. Well, excuse me, we have 1 member. Our member that we've appointed is Brendan Bland, the general manager at Greenfield Ethanol. And the other person who lives in our township but is appointed by Augusta is Joe Hendricks, who's the former plant manager at Invista or DuPont. And Joe is intimately involved with, first of all, his knowledge of what infrastructure is there and available. Secondly, the players at Invista, who are the owners, the present owners. He's very involved with them. And he's also very involved with the BIC organization in Sarnia, who's actually taken an equity position in one of the companies that has got an option agreement at the Invista property. So there's a lot of positive things happening that they didn't say that I thought they could have said. And I'm saying a few of them right now, because I'm not giving any names. So I think if everybody's prepared to let this thing sort of percolate, let's put it that way, until after the August the 7th meeting, then maybe we can pick the conversation up again if that's. But I wanted to have this discussion because I didn't want you to think that I invited them here and then we're not going to talk about it again. You know what I mean? And I think everybody's got a sort of an initial position. I understand what your initial positions are. My job is to try to raise your comfort level, and I'll try to work on that. I got to admit, sometimes my comfort level ebbs and flows too, you know.
Mr. Mayor, financially, are they good? Can you say that, like the committee?
The people that they're dealing with?
No.
The commission?
Yeah.
Oh yes, the commission, the finances of the commission are in good shape. We've each put in our $4 per capita, and we ran a slight surplus in 2017, and we ran another surplus in 2018, and we'll balance and break even in 2019, and then the 3-year term comes to an end in on July the 1st of 2020. And that's the end of the first cycle, as you say. Now, to go another cycle, which would be another 3 years at another $4, and one of the things that I'm going to be looking for in the next year, not wait until the next cycle, is that there was a lot of commitment that they would try to leverage our $4 per capita levy and try to double and triple that with grants from the federal government and the provincial government. Somehow or another, they never got around to doing that. But they did, just to point out to you, the consultants that are working for the commission are the same consultants who managed to attract $220-some thousand from the provincial government to the city of Brockville under the province's Community and Transition Program. And that was a big influx of money to the city of Brockville that resulted in their report. I haven't got a copy of it with me, but that was the big thick report that we all got invited to the presentation of that report in Brockville. I think, were you there? No. Did anybody else go besides me? I thought there was, but Deb went, yeah. So anyway, I'm looking for more of that leveraging of our dollars. Okay, so if it's okay, we'll suspend this discussion for now and pick it up a little bit later. Any objections to that? All right, we'll go on then with item number 7 on the agenda. Now, under item number 7A, we have the emergency management bylaw, and I think the briefing note comes with a recommendation here that the council adopt the emergency plan bylaw. And so I'll open the floor for discussion on this item. Questions, if any, and if you have any questions on the actual emergency management program, you can direct them through the chair, and Kevin or the CAO will answer them.
Just a clarification point, Mr. Mayor. On the sheets, I guess they're the list of duties or the list of activities. The ones in the column that are marked X, does that mean they're not completed?
Okay, so through the chair, I'll ask Kevin. I think that's Kevin's report.
Oh, all right.
Have you seen the report, Kevin?
Yeah.
The little X's, what does the X mean?
The X's are the ones, through you, Mr. Mayor, that have been already begun or are in process through the township. I believe is that a fair statement, Deb?
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, one of the things that we have to do as an emergency control group is sit down and go through this checklist and make sure that this is up to date. This is Kevin's impression of where we are, but we haven't reviewed it in detail.
Okay. So the blanks are the things that are still left to be done.
Hanging. Okay, yeah, that's the question.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, sure. Important document, do we, time-consuming document, for sure. Do we keep accurate amount of hours and men or personnel hours that go into the document? And can we, is there any way to put a dollar value on putting this document together year after year after year after year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have not made a practice of keeping track of that kind of thing. For the most part, our emergency plan and program has been managed in-house through existing staff. This is the first year that we've had a consultant hired to help us with that work. That makes it easier to know what the dollar figure is. Other municipalities, Augusta, for example, they have a part-time person who works year-round, and that's all he does, is emergency management. I couldn't begin to guess. The emergency information officer was tasked with trying to assemble and submit the proper documentation, and I'm not sure how much time she would have spent on that, but I know the actual submission portal is pretty onerous.
Yeah, and in reading through, we made 3 separate submissions on this past one.
Yeah, and each time you submit, if there's something comes back and says you know that you haven't got this or you haven't got that, then you have to withdraw your package and resubmit the whole thing.
Go ahead.
just further through the chair. Every year, same document needs to be redone year, like 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020.
Most of the requirements of the program are annual. There are some things that, that the folks at the OFMEM have now been able to finally link the training portal with their reporting portal so that we shouldn't have to resubmit our training certificates for all of our different members of the group, but that's a relatively recent event. But yeah, most of the things are annual, so yes, it will have to be done again.
For now.
Okay, now, any other questions with this document? Okay, so the document, the briefing note comes with the recommendation, the committee recommends that council adopt the emergency plan bylaw. So the chair is looking for a mover and a seconder to action the recommendation. So I have Councillor Dillabaugh moving and Councillor Cameron seconding. So is there any further discussion before I call the question?
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
one or two more. Pretty aggressive timeline late in the year. Do we think we can actually, because there's going to be a lot of discussions, it seems like, coming at that exact same time. Is there even a possibility that we can get this done?
Oh, through the chair, yes, certainly. This would not be the first time that the program got left until the latter half of the year. We can definitely do it. I mean, the OFMEM lays out a program that it suggests to municipalities that they follow, so they don't end up dealing with things at the end of the year. And it typically is a quarterly thing that you have to do. And don't mind admitting we're a little behind this year, but I don't see any problems achieving it. This meeting tonight can be considered one of our training events, and you know, the fact that we've had a conversation, we've talked about the program is it all goes towards that fulfilling those requirements.
Okay. And one more, if I may. Is there an easier way?
Not that I'm aware of.
Like, is there one that is more efficient, that doesn't duplicate, that gets it through a little more efficiently? No.
I would defer to Mr. Spencer. He's dealt with more municipalities than I have.
I mean,
Is there an
where I'm
easier
coming
way?
from is all 405 municipalities are doing the exact same plan. Everybody's
Plus the county level.
plus, yeah,
Plus
sure.
the counties. Oh, sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, there are municipalities out there who have partnered up with an individual like me coming in and assisting, because quite honestly, there is duplication through like-minded municipalities. So if similar geographic, similar population, similar hazards, it is not beyond the scope of reason that two municipalities could get the same person, split the costs, and they could come in and quite honestly duplicate some of this stuff to make it that easy. The check sheet that you have there, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 85 points. It used to be, for those that were involved in municipalities previous to 16, it used to be 10 check marks. And then they sent it to a lawyer. and it came back with all these extra. So that's why bringing that bylaw forward, yes, it's onerous, yes, there's a lot of words in it, it seems like there's a lot there, but it takes away from staff to say, this is all done. This is done and out of the way, and once it's approved, it's that one bylaw number that when the province asks, you reference that. And they have the information then. So in a sense, that bylaw is a little bit of an efficiency, so to speak. I know it doesn't look like it on paper, but it's an efficiency, so to speak, to say that there's that one-stop shop now for the province. You wanna know who your emergency program group is? There it is, it's in this bylaw. It's been approved by council with this bylaw number. And you can just, repetition assists in that.
Right. So there'll be a number of appendices with the bylaw? There doesn't seem to be any with it.
No, through the chair, it's all part of your program, it's all part of your emergency plan. So you approve your emergency plan, your plan will have those appendices in it.
Oh, yes,
So,
okay.
so that's where it comes in, and then when we do the exercise or training to do, having to do with the plan,
Yeah,
that's where the review will take place that you folks will.
okay, the bylaw remains constant.
And the bylaw, yes, the bylaw remains the same.
So, just taking, and this is just a little different direction for me, is, I heard that you say the possibility to partner up with neighbors
Yep.
could be there.
Mhm.
And if the will of other councils was there to work together on a document like this, there could be actual cost savings there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor?
I'm kind of on the same vein as our deputy mayor here. It seems like a lot of duplication going on. I get the partnership with neighbors, but to me, the United Counties has to put up emergency service plans that basically covers all the townships. So I would think that I know we have certain issues, but whatever issues we have for, could be cause an emergency, counties are gonna have them listed in their plan very same, because they're gonna be the same thing for them, because they're over the whole area. So it seems to me that if we're talking about looking at cost saving and efficiencies, why don't we just have one emergency plan for the United Counties that covers all the townships?
Well, because you could have an emergency, for example, at the, well, I'll take my favorite risk is a Via Rail train wreck.
Yeah.
In the middle of the bush, halfway between Cardinal and Johnstown, inaccessible by an immediate road. That type of an emergency wouldn't affect Rideau Lakes Township, and it wouldn't affect Westport at all. And if the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal declared an emergency because of that situation, it would be because we had exhausted our resources. Our firemen were totally engulfed and engrossed. Perhaps as well the county, perhaps even the county EMS service would be engulfed, but the effect on other townships would be negligible and not known. So there are such things as emergencies that are localized emergencies, and then there are other emergencies that are on the whole county is affected. And the exercise that we had in Kempville last week, I think it was last week, can't remember, but the exercise that we had in Kempville last week was sort of one of these kinds of exercises where it started out small. Kevin, I think, was responsible for putting it together, or pieces of it. Started out small, and eventually it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where actually there was almost a countywide emergency, right?
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair.
And maybe I've got the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, no, that was an excellent explanation. When there is an emergency in your municipality, you own that. That is you. People aren't coming in and taking over, so you still have your control. And that's the thing that people, sometimes it's forgotten, because if control is lost, certain things happen that you may or may not be able to like very much,
Yeah.
for lack of a term. If an emergency happens within Edwardsburg Cardinal, you are the person who has the say on, are people taken care of, are our resources where they need to be, do we have the funding coming back from the province if it's a natural disaster that we can get our hands on. I like the way you said it with Rideau Lakes and Westport. It can tend to get watered down if you have it too widespread. So excellent example.
And one thing that is absolutely clear, and I'll just reinforce what what Mr. Spencer has just said. In the case of an emergency, the elected people, through the mayor, the elected official are in charge, and you own it. You own it, clear and simple. Now, the plan is set up in such a way that the resources that you have available to you and that can feed into you are a multitude of resources at the local level, and each one of those local resources has the ability to draw from a higher level. So you're owning the situation, but you have tremendous support through a whole number of provincial and federal institutions. But so is there any other discussion here?
I wasn't referring that we give up our control as a township emergency. What I'm referring to is why are each one duplicating this plan? Why isn't the county plan and 10 municipalities in it, why isn't a combined plan broke down and serviced under one? Because most of the funds, as you refer, all the extra agencies we refer to in an emergency, let's face it, we're not gonna handle an emergency with our own staff unless it's pretty small. Maybe we're dependent on county, we're dependent on provincial, maybe even federal if it happens to be on a waterway or something along the way, but we're doing have to do all this red tape each township. Why isn't there a way of working with the counties that we package this into one combined package, that we don't, everybody has to be submitting all the time, constantly, the same thing, that we can't, the counties couldn't be looking after an overall general plan, and we have our plan, and we just, if there's people's names changed and one thing and another, we submit them to the counties, and the county folds that all into one and say, here, province, here's the plan. If the mayor of Edwardsburg Cardinal declares an emergency, that's their bylaw such and such, you can pull that out, and the counties just keep it updated for us, instead of every township going through the same red tape all the way.
Well, I mean, the only way you get around that is if our corporate structure was set up the same way as Prince Edward County is set up. So Prince Edward County doesn't have townships, it's just the county. And as the county, and when they set up their corporate structure back in 2000, when the entities all amalgamated, they chose that all of the township structures would disappear. So it's just the county, and everything is done on the county-wide basis. We just didn't govern ourselves or choose to govern ourselves in that manner, and we've chosen to have 10 distinct townships with a county on top and an upper tier, and that's just the way the province mandates that we handle these emergency management programs. Each level of the tier has to have their own process to move things upward.
We don't get rid of red tape.
Well, get rid of it if you want to get rid of the townships.
What we do, through the chair, we do though combined or joint emergency service, not planning, but scenarios and like their preparedness. Like there's been an accident, and we do the scenario, do we not? Like in a planning sense.
Well, since I've been on council, we've done it two ways. We've had local township emergency exercise, which is a tabletop exercise that was conducted here, just dealing with our township, and then we also had a county-wide exercise, which counts as our township training, but we had a county-wide emergency exercise, and I think we operated from this location, and all the other townships operated from their own location, did we not? On that county-wide exercise?
On that specific one?
Yeah.
The exercise was related to communication, so we all stayed in our own home municipality to make sure that the communication program that we had set up would work. But we've had many joint exercises, not just with the county, but even just with Augusta, or just with Prescott, or just with 2 or 3 of the local municipalities. the countywide exercises, in my experience, don't give us a good opportunity to really review our own plan. But they do fulfill the requirements of the problem.
And then we had our own, I'm gonna call it unique situation, where our own emergency control group was called together, and I can't remember what that specific issue was, but we called our emergency control group together to deal with the situation that was developing. Maybe you or the director of operations can recall what that issue was.
Yeah, it was when we had the major fire in Cardinal, and at the same time as a major water break, and the pressure in the tank, in the tower dropped significantly, and it took us a long time to find out why we had such a huge drop in water, because we thought it was to do with the fire, but then we found out it was breaking. Now we had two things going on at the same time, and so we used the debrief from that incident as our emergency exercise.
Right. And it was a good exercise in how the plan is supposed to work, and we had a good debrief as well. Yeah. Okay, and so there's the kind of a situation again, which was very localized and handled at the local level.
One last one.
One last
If I can.
If I can.
Just quick, so if we did decide as a group to, say, partner with Prescott and Augusta to do a combined one, out of that though will still come individual bylaws that we could apply back to our specific township. It doesn't seem like there's a will from a county's level, but if we had a smaller group that had similar issues and similar problems, we could find a way.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. Yeah, it's, absolutely. There are examples of it throughout Ontario. Smaller municipalities that just don't have the resources to be able to put the onus on your CAO, or put the onus on your fire chief, or whoever the case may be. There are groups out there that band together, and it may just be small municipalities in Leeds Grenville, Athens, Front of Young, and you folks. All have agriculture, all have transportation emergencies, all have similar situations. They might not be linked directly one beside the other, but I mean, there are definitely opportunities, yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, no further discussion. I'm gonna call a question on the recommendation that's on the table. Those in favor? Aye. Motion is carried. And so now I'm at item number 7B, which is the second quarter building report. Thanks very much.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
folks.
So the second quarter building report is in front of us, and see the statistics. And are there any questions? Through the chair of the CAO, I guess. Counselor?
What happened with according to our software here, that our agriculture was added into industrial there, was being kept separate all the time before? What happened with the software all of a sudden that it got added in?
I honestly can't answer that, Councillor Hunter. The chief building official is working on it. It's a very purpose-built piece of software. We're actually trying to find a way to incorporate it better into our other software programs. This is a one-off, if I can put it that way, software that I think it was our former building official, Jason Besna, who invested in this software. And we're now finding it's a bit difficult to marry it with other softwares, so we're working at trying to get something done there.
Because this is the first report, I think. I mean, I don't have the one from the previous quarter, but were they combined in the previous quarter? No, just something has slipped in this quarter.
Yeah.
Any other questions with this one? Before I go on to the next report? No? Okay, moving on to the next report. I note, what have we got here? Three residences so far this year, compared to a total of 13 last year, so. halfway through the year, but not halfway there yet. Okay, so now I'm on item 7C, which is the second quarter treasury and reserve update. And that is where am I here?
7C.
7C, yes, 7C. 3 or 4 reports here, all in one. The first one is the asset, liability, tangible capital assets, reserve and reserve funds. Any questions there? Hearing none, I'm about to move on. And so the second page is the long-term debt. And for the first time, we see that the, where am I looking here? The low lift station, Royal Bank, is gone finally after 10 years. And one question that I had was the, item number 3, the Komatsu Financial. It shows the end date as being June of 19. So it was supposed to end in June 19, but at June the 30th, it looks like there's still 2,772 owing. So, just wondering what happened there. Did it not end in June?
I'd have to double check, through the chair, I'd have to double check that end date, but it's probably just a payment or a partial payment, and that's
Okay,
the 2772 is only a partial payment of.
okay, just a closeout.
Like a
in other words.
closeout, yeah.
Anybody else have anything to bring forward from this one?
I'd just like a clarification question. We'll go to page 1 of the year-to-date budget variance report, and I'm looking down and I see a total in the revenue column, and then I'm looking down under department revenues. And there doesn't seem to be a total there.
This one, where are you?
We've jumped to
Page
the-
1.
But what report are you on?
Right here. This report right here.
Where's C, 7C?
7D.
No, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. We're on 7C.
Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry.
I lost track of where you were.
Yeah, I thought you had moved on from this.
So, we still have 2 more
Okay,
pages.
Means there's something fishy in C.
Okay, sorry. I'll get back to that.
Okay. So we're on the 3rd page of 7C, which is the reserve and the reserve funds.
Right.
As of June the 30th. Okay, so are there any questions here? Now, this is after the audit, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I've marked this one as received July the 5th after the 2018 audit. So the opening the balance that we see on the 3rd column, which is January 1, 2019, that's where we started this year and ended last year.
Correct.
And I can compare that with the 1st column, which is where we ended 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, and all the middle column is just the year-end adjustments, which are those surpluses and deficits in.
Right, so in fact, over the year 2018, we increased our reserves by 200,000 roughly,
Roughly.
okay? And then if I compare the 3rd column, which is total 6,580,000, with the farthest column on the right, where the 4 columns in between are what we anticipate doing in 2019. So we anticipate building our reserves from 6,580,000 up to 7,600. That's what we anticipate doing. Is that correct?
And that is before we actually spend some of the money in 2019 on capital.
So is
There
what
will-
we're anticipating spending in 2019 on capital, would it not show in transfers out?
Not until we actually do the transfers out. The
Oh.
transfers in and the year-to-date interest is actually what's occurred. It's budgeted, the transfers in are budgeted transfers in as per
Yes.
the budget. The 2019 interest is on the consolidated, that's what we've earned in the money that's sitting separately from our general workings fund.
Right?
And the only transfer out that I've done year-to-date is the policing costs, because that's an amount that's stable. We know that that's the amount we're going to pull. We're not pulling more than that from the reserve.
We budgeted to pull
We
that.
pulled that, yeah, budgeted to pull that. But there are certainly some budgeted transfers out after capital. Once the capital projects are coming, are finalized, then we'll know how much we need to pull to fund those capital projects.
Oh, okay, all right, so the transfers out does not show anticipated capital withdrawals?
No, not at this point, no.
Okay, does not show anticipated capital withdrawals. Okay, does anybody else have any questions with these numbers? Hearing none, I'm about to go to, there is no fourth page. Okay, so I'm about to go then now to Mr. Cameron's 7D.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Cameron,
Not
Councilor
not a
Cameron.
problem, I was confused at it. So we have page one, and we have page two, and then we start our report, the year-to-date budget variance report. And I see where the revenues are all totaled, and then the department revenues don't seem to be totaled. But the recreation, Parks and Recreation, has a subtotal across the bottom. Am I missing something there, or is that just the way this is?
No, up
No,
another page.
Through the chair, on the second page, there is a total for the total of departments. There's a subtotal for Parks and Rec, but then on page two, there is a total for all department revenues before capital revenues. You see that on page two?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I did subtotal
Okay.
recreation, but then there's a grand total on page two.
Okay,
Yeah.
And so planning, economic, and agriculture, that's a subtotal as well.
No, that's the total, the only subtotal that's in that column is the Parks and Rec, and that's only because there are various
Yeah.
places where we get revenue from.
Right.
All the other departments are a single line.
Right, okay.
okay. And then does that apply on page three as well, where we have operating expenses? And it just seems in the first column, we'll just use the first column, year-to-date 2018. It seems to end at 18,300, and then we start Public Works. Now, the total that I see in Public Works, does that include the upper numbers?
No, the same premise in expenses is the same in revenue. So I'm only subtotaling the Public Works because there are various aspects to Public Works. As well in rec, there's various aspects or various sub-departments in recreation. All the other lines, for instance, council or administration, all the expenditures are lumped into one line item.
Okay,
But there is a subtotal, and if you look at the line that says subtotal for Public Works, that's why it's highlighted, and Public Works is highlighted. The same for recreation, there's a subtotal for recreation, but then when you go down on page 4, there is a total of department
right,
operations.
yes, and I saw, okay, I just thought there might have been something that
No,
was missed.
I was just trying to give clarification for those two departments that have multiple sub-departments.
Okay, thank you, that's clear, thank you.
Councilor Dillabaugh.
Now, can you help me out? What's overhead expenses in Public Works?
Main overhead expenses with respect to Public Works is your salaries, hydro for the Pittston
Heat
Garage.
for the buildings?
Yeah,
That
heat
kind-
and hydro
okay.
for the Pittston Garage and the other
Okay,
garages.
so we don't keep that separate, heat,
Telephone.
hydro, we don't break that down?
Yes.
We keep it under, for Public Works, we would keep it under overhead expenses. We break out things such as winter control, hardtop maintenance, those other kind of functions of Public Works. But anything related to staffing for vacation or whatever would go under that overhead.
Expense?
Hydro, heat, anything that's really not lumped into those other sub-functions of Public Works.
Yeah, this is a summary.
This is just
The-
a
the
summary,
gen- Of the general ledger.
correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions here? No other questions? Go to the last page, which is the capital project status report. So we're on that page now. Are there questions on this page? I'm gonna have a number here if nobody else. Councilor Hunter.
One there for the Cardinal 401 signage regarding signs that are, got the budget drafted for nothing been done as yet to it, or when are we expecting these signs to pay for?
Through the chair, I believe the signage is done. What we're waiting for is invoicing, and I think there might be a little bit of landscaping or lighting that needs to be finalized before the invoices. But from what I understand, the Cardinal signage is up.
That's the 401 signage.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, the signs are up. They just haven't finished the landscape.
Yeah, we've been in touch with the vendor several times to try to secure when they're final and when they'll send us an invoice, but nothing's been sent to us up.
They're the same folks that are supposed to be doing our village signage, are they not?
Yes, sir.
Is somebody sick?
Yes, sir.
No?
Needs to be slow.
It's a sign company.
I've got a couple of questions. The fire department says replace hydraulic spreader purchased from Code 4 Fire Rescue. We budgeted 17,900, we spent 16,785, so that's complete, is it not?
It is.
Okay, so, I guess my question is, in that fourth column where that column that says recommendation, if that column said status and then the word was complete in there, I wouldn't have to bother you, but go up to the next one, Gallup Canal North Bridge. Tender awarded to DW Restoration, the 97,468, that was the tender amount, and it says work started. So then it shows year-to-date actual, 100,677. Now, is that complete? And the second part of the question is, the 100,677 is more than the tendered amount. So two questions there.
Okay, I can answer part of the question. I can answer the money part. The 100,000 is the difference between the tender amount, and the 100,000 would be the non-rebated HST, because we have to claim or expense a portion of the HST.
Okay, so
Okay.
the 100,677, that's our total
The
cost.
tender plus non-rebated HST,
Okay, now, the next part of the question.
which is
Is it
is it
complete?
completed?
So through the chair, the work is completed. There's probably another 5 to 10,000 to come with respect to contracted men from the engineer.
So we're waiting for an invoice.
We are waiting for one final invoice, I believe.
Okay, and there's still a couple of issues there that a number of us are asking to have discussion about. Okay, now Walker Street. It says Walker Street road work, complete project. We're completing it in 2019. Cornwall gravel to complete project, work started. Okay, so we budgeted to do 158. We spent 3,073, but they were to complete by June the 30th. We just haven't invoiced us yet.
They have not invoiced us yet.
Okay, but complete but not invoiced.
Complete, a few minor deficiencies.
Okay. Complete with minor deficiencies.
Can we go back to the bridge?
Yeah?
Uh,
Go ahead.
Do we have a reason why it's over the tendered amount?
The tender amount didn't
So-
include the HST.
Yeah, through the chair, there also was one change order,
Oh,
so some additional cement work.
So the 97,468 was a base tender amount.
Correct.
So there was a change order on that one.
Correct.
Okay, tandem axle snowplow. Nothing spent. Buyout excavator, lease expires August 2019. Volvo Financial Services notified of buyout option, so not complete yet. Replace 135 meters of sidewalk. What's happening with that one?
Through the chair, we're in the process of tendering that work now.
So do we have a date for tender out?
I do not at this stage.
So again, in the far right column, if we could just get a status of the project. So now Weir Road resurfacing and Pittston Road resurfacing. Contract is awarded. Now, what's happening with those two? They're waiting for us?
So through the chair, we have a few more culverts to change, and Coco Paving will be in the week of July 22nd to start their work. They're going to do Pittston, Weir, and the county road at the same time.
Okay. So July 22nd, week of. And then storm management, culvert, Smith Road culvert. Culvert is purchased, but we haven't installed it. Purchased but not installed, right?
Correct.
Walker Street, complete project. That's part of the one up above. Cardinal Fishing Dock, waiting on SNC. What's happening there? Waiting on SNC, but I mean, what's happening?
I believe the dock is actually constructed, but we have not yet been able to install it, so we haven't been billed for it.
Oh, is it here?
It's there?
No, we haven't got it here.
Oh,
Is that because of the high water?
I get a number of people that are asking me, are we gonna
Yes,
install
yeah.
those docks or not?
We are monitoring daily. We will get them in instantly.
I don't understand it, they're floating docks, though. Why can't we put them in?
Because they are anchored to something in the water. It's a good question for Mr. Spencer, perhaps, next week's public works facility.
There's two docks that are permanently anchored in there. Right now, they attach onto them. And you're gonna be like this until the water level goes
I'm
down.
talking about the ones up above, by the canteen.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the ones that
Oh, how
are
come
down
they're
at the
not,
boat
like, I
launch.
thought they'd be in for July 1, actually.
And Deputy Mayor Deschamps had requested that, and facilities manager reviewed the situation and felt it was not safe to put them in.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that part. Thank you.
It seems to me that we've gotta find a solution to this problem, because this high water's not gonna go away.
I think it's an annual problem,
Oh, it's
or biannual.
not a problem, it's a real life.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, they, you know, we all know that the Joint Commission has set a new, 2014 standard, and if they don't change the way they're handling winter water, we're gonna have this on a an ongoing basis.
I'm gonna report on that a little bit more under Mayor's report, and it's very complicated, actually.
Yeah.
So the Cardinal Pool stairs are in. I'm getting all kinds of emails. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Agreed.
One comment.
Go ahead.
One comment. Well, I mean, we use the pool all the time. We've been in several times. I didn't want to take my camera in and take pictures of them, but where those stairs are, the stairs are beautiful. They're absolutely perfect. The coping directly above the stairs, which is within 3 inches of doing it, has a great big hole in it and a bunch of tiles missing or a bunch of cracked space right above it. It amazes me that the company that came in to do them while they were doing concrete work didn't,
Clean up the mess.
Well, it's not, I know that isn't what they were there to do, but, you know, seeing it right there, to say, hey, we're here, we've got our product, you know, can that be done? It just, using the pool, it looks like it's going to be an issue all around the bottom of the coping, you know, if it's not already, it will be. So it just surprises me that that wasn't included. But the stairs themselves are awesome.
Okay, Cardinal Arena floor scrubber, not yet ordered. Spencerville Arena chiller ordered from Simcoe, 99,000 to be replaced in June. Meeting with Spencerville Arena lighting, meeting with LIS for grant info this week. Is there a possibility there?
It's a very minor amount of money, Mr. Mayor. There's about 10% of the cost available as a grant, provided we apply before December 31st. So we'll have a report for you next week on that.
Okay, Marjorie Street relining to tender late in summer, early fall. Adelaide Street pumping station work in process, expect June or July, weather dependent. Berm at the water treatment plant, tender awarded June 24th to Robert Nash, 47,000, and we had budgeted 75. And we know when he's starting.
Through the chair, we're trying to set up a meeting later this week or early next week.
And water tower diffuser, Landmark Municipal Services, fabrication underway, installed late June or July, 30,000. Okay. That's your capital report. Councilor Dillabaugh.
Do the chair have one question? The chiller, is it installed, completed? Is it
No.
June?
No.
It's not?
Not yet. We had some electrical work to be done before it could be installed, but they're working on it.
But it's here, the chiller itself?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions with this report? Hearing none, I'm about to move on then. And the next one is, that was 7D. And the next one is 7E, OCIF formula-based grant. There's a recommendation that committee recommends council direct the treasurer to set up a reserve fund account for the receipt of OCIF formula-based funding to be used on future eligible capital projects that are approved by council. So you see the briefing note. Are there any questions with the briefing note? Everybody's aware that, I'll just go through it again. The province had originally set up OCIF in two components. One was formula-based, went to all municipalities based on a formula, half of it. The other half was distributed amongst the municipalities according to their applications, and that half of the program has been canceled. So the chair is looking for a mover and a seconder to action the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Deschamps, and is there a seconder? Seconder by Councillor Cameron. Discussion, if any. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, now where am I? Council inquiries, notices of motion. Anybody have anything to bring forward? I have a leading question to staff. I have in front of me the township and committee agenda preparation forecast. And on page 3 of that forecast, there's a number of items that it looks like they're on our to-do list, but there's no dates beside them. And is it the management team that kind of determines what the dates are gonna be, or can we, as a group, say, can we put this one a higher priority than that one? And I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the one that's fire department established policy that resulted out of that seminar that we were at in Maitland, which I kind of see as a high priority to do thing.
Certainly, those are things that we will get to, for sure. If you would like to set our priorities for us, we'd be more than happy to listen to that. But I gotta warn you, it's probably gonna mean we'll have to set something else aside while we refocus.
I didn't really wanna do that, I was just wondering when we would see the
Yeah,
dates.
well, as soon as we can possibly get things to you, we will. It's a bit of a, it's an interesting thing, if I may, just as an aside, in my last CAO's meeting, countywide CAO's meeting, everybody's finding the same thing. Usually at this time of year, you find things slow down a little bit, you can get to those things, and nobody's seen that this year, everybody's just busy, and I think it's the modernization fund work that everybody's doing that's.
Yeah, everybody's,
taking time.
everybody is really in turmoil, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who I talk to, they all say the same thing, tremendous pressures. And in a way, I was kind of hoping that, and when I looked at this list and saw all of the ones that didn't have a date beside them, I said to myself, oh my goodness, I know exactly what's happening here. But I had kind of hoped that one of the things that we would be able to get to a little bit quicker was the capital items that we're thinking about for 2020. And that's not on the list, but if you happen to be in one of your management committee meetings.
We're having one tomorrow, I'm sure somebody will remember.
Okay, so I'll go on, I don't want to start setting priorities to the staff, that's for sure. Because I'm afraid what would happen to the ones that weren't on the list. Does anybody else have anything to raise in terms of council inquiries or notices of motion? Hearing none. Okay, I'm about to go on to item 9 on the list. So on item 9 on the list, I have 4 things I just want to report to under the mayor's report. First of all, I think everybody saw the announcements about the EORN project, and the feds made the announcement, 3 simultaneous announcements in 3 different ridings by 3 different Liberal MPs, and the feds have finally put in their $71 million, and so now that project will really get underway in a big way.
Have we got the industry money?
They're very confident, and I think,
Who's got?
well, the EORN people are very confident.
Oh, yeah.
Their last report to us was that if they could get the commitment before the end of August, the industry was there. That was their last report to us. But after August, all bets were off. And that's the way we had it conveyed to us. I don't know anything other than that. You may have sources that know.
I don't have any information, I just know industry can't make any money on it, so they're not gonna run to the table.
No, that's true. All right, the second item I wanted to report on was the rail bridge culvert. The rail bridge that goes over County Road 2. The contract was signed last week, and the work on that project will start very soon, I think probably the last week of July. And County Road 2 will be reduced to one lane only. And there will be traffic lights at either end of the restriction. And that'll work just fine under normal traffic conditions. My worry is what happens if we get a closure on Highway 401. So I did meet with the inspector today and told her that this is happening and that I was very concerned about what would happen if we had a closure on 401 and we would need traffic control. And she said, in a very polite way, sorry, you're on your own. She said, I know that if I have a closure on 401, you're expecting me to provide traffic control at Highway 16 County 2 intersection and County Road 22 County 2 intersection. I know that. I'll do my best to have people there. But as far as putting 2 more people under the bridge, I don't think I can do that. And she referred to me the example of what happened in Prescott when Highway 401 was closed last time. And as you know, Prescott has removed 3 sets of stoplights, and they've put up stop signs. But when Highway 401 was closed, they sent their public works people down to the locations of those 3 signs and just signaled the traffic to keep moving. Don't stop for the stop signs. So the traffic just flowed through those 3 intersections without interruption. And she said, have you not got public works people that you can use? I said, well, our staff is a bit reluctant. And she said, well, what about your fire people, your firemen? I said, well, again, we're reluctant. And she said, well, I think you better look into it because I can't ensure you that I'll have anybody there. So I'm just sort of signaling to staff and to council. Now, there is I'll come back to you in a second.
Okay.
There is a question of money. So if we get our public works people out, who's gonna pay them? You know, cause generally when Highway 401's closed, it's 12, 13, 18, 20 hours. Who's gonna pay them? And I don't think we can expect them to do it for nothing, whether it's public works or firemen. So I said to the CAO tonight, I'm going to visit the new regional director for Eastern Ontario, headquartered in Kingston, and I'm gonna tell him that if his highway closes and we have to put traffic control in place, we're probably gonna have to invoice them for it and just see what his reaction is. But in the meantime, there's the whole question of trying to get our resources in place and have a plan in place if Highway 401 closes. No, Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. At one of the last meetings, I suggested that perhaps we could use our fire department people, and that was not met with a great approval, and I can certainly understand why. Since that meeting, I've done some research on the Highway Traffic Act, and there are only two people that can direct traffic. One is a police officer, and another is a construction worker. They've been duly trained to do so, and I have been advised that if any other people, other than those designated people, are directing traffic and there becomes a problem, that person is liable. So ask your director in Kingston when you talk to him about that, because I would just, just cringe if we had our own people out there and something did happen where somebody was injured and they come back on that person. I urge you to follow that through very carefully at your Kingston meeting.
I don't know what to do here. Councillor Hunter.
I understand where we're coming from this, and I know our contractor's putting lights in place there during the time. But most of these construction jobs where they're doing bridges or something like that, if it's during working hours and they're a problem, the construction company put flagmen on there and shut those lights off and flag. My road, or quarry pit operator just come back from out west, drove out and back. All out 417 and region number 1 out through there doing bridges and stuff, and the only time the lights were on is when after 10 o'clock at night when he was coming through, because they worked till 10 and then the lights were operating. All the time in between that was flagmen at each end, and the long sections of road that were blocked, the police were escorting caravans back and forth where there's sections of 2 miles, a mile and a half closed down. It was OPP that were bringing them back and forth across, so.
Okay,
For
well,
the police say that they can't direct traffic, they seem to be able to do it at other major jobs, so.
okay, well, just so you know now, because I was present when the contract was signed, I didn't sign it, but I mean, I was present when it was signed, and the contractor is certainly relying on these traffic lights that he's rented to do the work. He's not planning on putting flag people up.
So between the two of them, did we come up with a solution then that a neighboring construction company who has flag people that work for them, that we could in emergency situations maybe contact one of those, like say it's Mr. Ken Miller, and ask if we could, in extreme circumstances, possibly use his flag to do these things that we're suggesting we use our own employees on a contractual basis. I mean, I think between all of you, you just sort of came up with a solution there. That makes sense, that way it's not putting our staff at risk, it's no cost to us unless we actually use them, and they're trained people who do it on a daily basis.
But I think these construction people to whether they fix a bridge or whether they fix a road. They're under the guidance that if there is an emergency that happens, that takes precedent. Like if an ambulance has to go through, if a police car has to go through, if there's an accident on 401, I think these people have to be aware of these situations, and there should be, I'm not sure about it, but there should be, I would think, some kind of steps that precede doing work on a bridge, you know?
Well, I ask, if Highway 401 is closed, can you remove your barrier between your lanes and open it up so both lanes are open? And the answer was no, we can't, just because of the length of time that it would take to move the concrete barriers. And the fact that they have no place to put them, like, you can only put them up against the side of the subway.
Well, they did the same thing on several bridges that cross 401. And if you've ever traveled between here and Kingston last summer, you saw them, and they were there, and no, they weren't moved, but, you know, I just don't know where it fits into the EDR problem with that much volume. So, because one lane of 401, you had them backed up for miles and miles and miles and miles.
you just.
And then going through, so wow.
It's narrow under that bridge anyway.
You know, that's the problem.
And the thing
That's
is,
another problem.
it'd be cute if we have the one way and, you know, back and forth. I mean, there'll be hours getting through.
Well,
Yeah.
if 401 ever closed in both directions,
Yeah.
then it would be absolute chaos.
Well,
But-
yeah, we know where it's gonna go, Cedar Grove Road.
Or Rooney Road.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm putting the notice out there because I don't have a solution here. I think it needs a solution, and I think we should have a plan in place. So I don't know, I mean, does staff have any suggestions at all for us? Or you need time to talk about it. Can you give us some resources? Can you tell us what our resources are?
Do we own the bridge?
Yes, it has been
That's-
determined that it's our
That's a
responsibility.
township asset, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or that's it.
And the road is a county road.
yes, it is.
Punch another tunnel.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we didn't know that this subject was gonna come up for discussion tonight, so no, we're not prepared to give you any answers.
I'll leave the thing as
We'll put our
a,
minds to it, see if we can come up with something creative.
okay, I'll
How
leave it
long is
with
the
you.
closure, Mr. Mayor, going to be?
What's that?
How long is the closure going to be?
6 to 8 weeks.
They'll have the bridge done in that period.
That's what they're hoping for.
Inclusion part.
Yes, yeah.
Might not be doing it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Okay,
Could we not, I know the port's doing the job and Kerr that has the contract, and he's, as you say, he's relying on these lights. Could staff not talk to him and see if there was an emergency? I know Kerr's have flag man, okay, he didn't budget it in for it, but if we gotta pay him to put his flag man on there, it's his job. Should we not be approaching him and say, look, if there's a shutdown, we're gonna need you to supply flagmen first? We have to pay them by the hour to be there, well, we have to pay them by the hour to be there if it's not included in there, but I would think he'd be our first contact, talk to Kerr, and they have flagmen, I know that,
so that would be up
Sure they do.
port general manager to
Yeah.
talk to his contractor. Okay, well, I mean, that's something we can also look at. Okay, I'm gonna move on because we're not gonna solve the problem sitting here at the table. I'll leave the problem up in the air. Two things left to talk about. The first is the control board. Now, Deputy Mayor had a resolution last meeting, which was that we send a letter to the International Joint Commission, and I think, has that resolution been forwarded? So that's in the hopper. I had four mayors actually, Mayor of Augusta, Mayor of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, Mayor of Elizabethtown Kitley, and Mayor of Frontenac asked me if I could arrange some sort of a meeting with the control board, the Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Control Board. So I spoke to the secretary. I've been talking to him several times during this emergency, or if it's not emergency, during this high water. I've established a pretty good relationship with them. And the original intent was to see if we could get them to host, we would host, if they would attend, 2 public meetings, one in Johnstown and the other in Lansdowne, so that the citizens would have an opportunity to speak to members of the control board to see what plans they might put in place for next year. Not necessarily to rag on them about what happened this year. But when the secretary got back to me today, he said, I want you to know that we will not be going into any public meetings, and that's on the advice that we're getting from the Ontario Provincial Police and the RCMP, because we have an entity that's monitoring our social websites, and the threats that are being made to my members are being recorded. Some people are being spoken to, and our advice is do not go to any public meetings. He said, what I might be prepared to do would be to set up a meeting with some members of my board and the mayors and the CAOs of those 6 townships that you mentioned, or those 5, 6 townships. So I just want you to know that from the board point of view, they will not engage in public meetings. They will engage with leaders, and they're talking about as well the conservation authorities. The other thing that he dropped on me, and kind of unsuspectingly, is that we do not control the lake levels. We control the outflow of Lake Ontario through the Moses Saunders Dam. That's all we do. We determine how much water is going to flow over or through Moses Saunders Dam. That's all we do. We cannot control the lake levels. And you people are going to have to learn that it is your job to control flooding. You're the ones that are going to have to control flooding. And he said, we're more than prepared to meet with you and tell you that, but what else can I tell you?
Who told you that?
People have been living on Toronto Island for over 100 years.
Yep.
They've never been flooded.
That's
until
right.
17 and now.
Yep.
So it's their problem. It's not the problem of the people in the communities.
I'm telling you what he's telling me.
Well, they should do their damn job is what they should say.
Well,
Is that the International Joint Committee or
no,
commission
no, no,
that's
no.
saying that, or?
Remember, IJC is here,
So it's-
six people, and they overlook the control boards. There are several control boards, of which Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence River is only one board. And that board, which is, by the way, is a group of volunteers, hydraulic engineers, retired most of them, they're hydraulic engineers, and all they control is the outflow through the Moses Saunders Dam. He said, it is impossible for human beings to control the level of Lake Ontario and Lake Superior and Lake Huron and Lake Michigan.
But Pat, it's the IJC that did the policy in 214.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
I read it on the internet.
Yeah, I know, but their position is that it's a treaty between 2 countries. Plan 2014 is a treaty between 2 countries, and all they do is
They
administer it.
responded to politicians?
Hmm?
Did they respond to politicians? when
They seem to
made
be
that
very
change?
sensitive to the mayor of Rochester and the mayor of New York State.
He wants higher levels?
Hmm?
He wants higher levels, those mayors?
No, no, no.
No, they don't want the eastern end flooded.
They don't want
And I
the
think
eastern
one
end
of the
flooded.
reasons, I think one of the solutions might be to put it down on the Ottawa River to control some of the flow, because that's where the backlog comes in.
You see, what's happening now is, what I'm doing is I'm trying to report it to you the way it was reported to me, so you can see how there's a shifting of opinion. Because if you'll recall, in the earlier stages of what was happening, it was actually blatantly stated that we're controlling the outflow over through the Moses Saunders Dam in order to relieve the pressure on Montreal. That was actually stated.
That's right.
Now the dialogue is changing, if I can put it that way. The dialogue is changing to, no, we can't control the level of the lakes, we just control the outflow.
But by letting more out in, say, the winter time, when you hit the spring, the level's lower than it was this spring, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
So they can let more out in the winter, or they can stop letting it out in the winter, and the lakes are gonna fill up or go down, depending on what they do.
and their response to that is, and I'm gonna let them speak for themselves if we ever get this meeting together, but their response to that is, the water freezes, the docks are all frozen in, we let more water out of the lake, and the docks all get pulled down with the ice. And now we got everybody mad at us again. So I'm just putting you in the picture for where the situation is. I don't have answers to these questions.
Well, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Hurricane Hazel, but Hurricane Hazel,
Yep.
when it hit Toronto,
Yep,
Yep.
we were in Toronto.
yeah,
The Humber River swelled to monumental levels, and it was all because of the flow from the north
yep,
coming down, okay, from
Yeah.
Collingwood and so on. And after that, and people lost their lives in that. because
Yes, that's true.
many, I don't know, 40 or 50 people lost their lives in tremendous amount of destruction. The province got involved, and I presume the federal government helped, and they built a whole series of control dams up in the north end of the source waters of the Humber River, so that they can control what's coming down that river. And they can, dams as well, so in heavy rains, like a Hazel type thing, they can hold water and control what's coming down that river. Maybe the Ottawa, which hasn't got, I don't think, any dam, maybe
There's no
only a
dams,
couple,
right?
right?
sure there is, the Swishaw is one,
Oh,
There's
yes,
one up
but
around Deep
I'm
River,
talking
isn't there?
between Ottawa and Montreal.
yeah. Yeah,
Is there a
there's
dam up around Deep
Yeah.
River or
Yeah,
Fort
the
Collins
Swishaw.
or something?
Yeah, the Swishaw, yeah. Yeah.
But again, I mean, I
That's a provincial thing.
go back to Councillor Cameron's comment, I mean, it was the flow from the Ottawa that was putting pressure on Montreal, and the control board, the Lake Ontario Control Board, restrained the outflow, and at the time, they said to relieve the pressure on Montreal. They said that. Now there's a different story.
Well, yes, because in Montreal, they didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear that.
So just so I'm corrected, my notes when I'm taking them too, is that the Great Lakes Management say they have no control over the St. Lawrence River level or the level of Lake Ontario.
Okay, now, so it's the Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Control Board, that's the name.
Have no control over the level of the St. Lawrence.
They didn't say that, they said, we do not control that level
Lake Ontario.
of Lake Ontario.
Where's it?
We only control the outflows. It's a different text
The Moser Saunders Dam.
through Moses Saunders
I
Dam.
think they had a strike there, didn't they? Moses Saunders? Yeah, this spring.
Anyway, I'm going on here. Let's get this over with. Last report. So on Tuesday, CAO and I went to Toronto to meet with the Deputy Minister about the Ontario Job Site Challenge. Only one problem was that the Deputy Minister didn't show up.
Had a nice trip.
But the Assistant Deputy Minister, Victor Severino, who we had talked to in a telephone conference, was sufficiently interested from our telephone conference to invite us to meet with his Deputy Minister, which we did, we went. The Deputy Minister didn't come to the meeting. Luckily, I had asked our MP, Steve Clark, if he would have a representative at the meeting, and he did send his Chief of Staff to be at the meeting with us. Now, I don't want to be too critical at a public meeting, but I got the impression that the whole Ontario Certified Site program has somehow lost its focus. the questions that we were being asked certainly didn't pertain to the previous program that we had put the other land through, the Giant Tiger land through. The person that we were talking to didn't seem to have a good comprehension of what it meant to be Ontario certified as an investment-ready site. So we tried to get that across. I don't think we were all that successful. But one thing that I did want to do, and the whole purpose for this, is to, at the end of the meeting, I had asked, at the end of the meeting we showed a video, and I want to play that video now that Deputy Mayor Deschamps provided to us. And just before we start the video, I'll introduce it exactly the same way that I introduced it at the meeting. So we starting at the bottom of Noe Road, or basically at the bottom of this, where Cedar Grove Road crosses the old railroad track.
Yep.
And the drone is gonna fly north, about better part of halfway up the tract of land that we were showing them. And then the drone is gonna turn and head south. You can see from here the type of terrain that we're showing them. If you would then, Rebecca. So that's the railroad track right in the center. And then off at the slightly to the left, you can see Noe Road. And the drone is flying northward. And it's flying towards Glen Smale Road. Now we're pitching them on this site, which was 1,500 acres. I think the drone has turned now, he's heading south, right?
Not yet.
No, not
That's
yet.
the hydro line to the
Water.
north still.
Oh, yeah, oh,
There's-
there. Now he's heading south. Yeah, great site. Really should have no problem getting it certified except for the cost.
What was that little flash down?
Oh. If only you knew.
Yeah. Must have been shot in the middle.
That's backwards.
And that's Cedar Grove Road, he's just going over Cedar Grove Road again now.
I have the crap.
Now all of these points we were stressing in our brief over and over again. So he got a, so I wanted to thank Deputy Mayor Deschamps for getting that ready for us. And we left them copies of it. They did seem interested in it, but I don't really know where we're gonna go from here, to be honest with you. So that's my
Good
report.
job.
And I'm at item number 10 on the agenda, and there's no public here for the question period. And item number 11, we don't have a closed session. And item number 12, Chair is looking for the motion to adjourn. Councillor Dillabaugh and Deputy Mayor Deschamps, those in favor? And that's carried.